Well, the same on again, off again state program that failed some in western North Carolina leading up to Helene did save other people.
A year and a half after that unprecedented storm's heavy rain triggered deadly landslides, there is now a renewed push to better prioritize an early warning system that maps landslide risks.
In the latest installment of the Lost Ground investigation, WCNC Charlotte's Nate Morabito learned for one family that program was the difference between life and death.
In a world that's predictably unpredictable,
it's something that's staggering to consider that life can be really just kind of on the edge like that.
a single decision sometimes makes all the difference.
Woo!
And that's why we find Vaile Adams and her family
Look how much they've eaten down.
thriving on a picturesque piece of property
This house is Wildflower Hill.
high above Yancey County that actually wasn't their first choice.
You must feel so grateful.
I feel unreasonably blessed.
They wanted to build on this land in Chimney Rock. But ahead of closing in 2021, the former professional historian looked at North Carolina's limited inventory of landslide maps that document past slides. She noticed the land they plan to build on sits in the footprint of a historic landslide. Hoping for reassurance, she hired a consultant.
They sat me down and they basically were like, we wanted to tell you face to face, this is not a property that is going to be safe for you.
The geologists told her landslides tend to happen near where they've occurred before. And based on the past, they could predict the future.
It may be 5 years, it may be 500 years, but at some point, this property is going to have a big problem.
The family made the difficult decision to give up their earnest money and walk away. 3 years later, Helene triggered a landslide that wiped out the property.
When I went back to see it, I mean, it was completely destroyed, washed away.
Their survival, not thanks to serendipity, but rather science.
Seeing some of the stories about what happened with Helene and realizing that we could have just as easily been one of those news stories instead of one of these is a difficult thing to have to process.
Aren't you glad that you made that push when you did?
I am. Even before Helene. I knew it'd make a difference in the future.
Retired Republican State Representative Chuck McGrady helped bring back North Carolina's landslide mapping program in 2018 after politicians cut its funding for the better part of almost a decade.
Yes, was time lost? Could we have done more? Yes.
He was a freshman lawmaker when the newly controlled Republican General Assembly stopped supporting the program in 2011, faced with a tight budget and opposition from builders and realtors.
I didn't like the fact that it was being unfunded, but frankly, we had to cut a lot of things.
As WCNC Charlotte found, that decision likely prevented the mapping of another 8 counties before Helene. Even now, most western North Carolina counties remain unmapped, including counties where landslides killed people during the unprecedented disaster.
It wasn't a priority for the mountain legislators at the time. I suspect it will be a priority going forward.
The Henderson County leader now sits on the governor's Western North Carolina Recovery Task Force and is pushing lawmakers to continue funding the program so geologists can finish what they started and update the counties they've already mapped.
You hate to have something have to go wrong before you fix it.
He predicts wide-ranging support.
I don't see anybody pushing back anymore.
In Yancey County, one of the many counties not yet mapped, Helene triggered deadly landslides.
Do you know we lost a couple trees down there, Ireland?
Yet at Adams' home, only minimal damage.
It's one of those things where I can't believe that we're so lucky.
Before building here, Adams hired the same landslide consultant, and this time got the green light.
I'm always the one like over-explaining to a friend.
Predictably, she's now sharing her experience with anyone who will listen, hoping in the process to help save more precious lives. Nate Morabito, WCNC Charlotte.
When we think about how the landslides not only impacted folks' homes and also lives, but also roadways, I just think about how valuable, like rebuilding I-40 when we had that landslide that put that project back.
Yeah, and we learned a lot of the landslides were probably somewhat caused or triggered by modification of the land, which means putting a road there or building property, which actually makes the slope more unstable. So there's going to be a landslide awareness week in North Carolina coming up later this summer. There's going to be kind of a big drive to try to get people to pay more attention to this threat going forward when we do have heavy rain. Because we know there's a threshold. You get a certain amount of rain over 24 hours, we know the risk for landslides will increase.
Well, and I think it was Brittany who was telling us, Van Voorhees, last week, that it's flooding followed by landslides, like the top risk for the high country.
Since I think it was 2000, the Weather Service says the number of fatalities in Western North Carolina, flooding's number one, landslides number two.
Yeah.
Above tornadoes, wind, trees, all that.